It's 7:42, time to go through the papers this morning with the editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and PR guru, Lara Fawcett.
I'm an expert.
You're an expert now, yeah?
I know, if I've been
turned into a
demoted.
guru.
No, guru's one up.
Oh, OK.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's fine, yeah. Oh, to be a guru.
Oh.
Yeah, anyone can be an expert these days. Tom, let's have a look at The Guardian, should we? And the EU is stockpiling drugs, apparently.
Yeah, so the EU has this plan to stockpile key medicines, and there's been concerns raised of what knock-on effects this could have for the NHS, given the fact that you've got 27 EU member states bargaining at that kind of volume, and so concerns that this is going to mean that in those kind of key medicine groups, let's talk about antibiotics, painkillers, even vaccines becoming an issue. This is something that I'd probably be more concerned about if it wasn't for the EU's pretty bad record of procurement. I mean, we all remember what happened with the vaccines, where they said that, you know, we're acting as one big block, therefore we're going to get a better deal and we're going to be able to move quickly. The opposite turned out to be the case. They had to move very, very slowly, whereas if you're dealing as one nation, you can actually move in a little bit more of a nimble fashion. But at the same time, I suppose it's an interesting turn on the part of the EU, which is they kind of want to constantly kind of demonstrate the fact that moving as one big bloc is necessarily going to be beneficial. But in practice, that's not always been the case, I dare say. So I wouldn't be too alarmed about this, but of course, anything where medicines are concerned, you want to be extra careful, don't you?
Mm.
It certainly is more difficult to get hold of some medicines at the moment.
That's very true.
Yeah.
HRT?
I don't know. Is it really? Gosh, I mean that's worrying if you can't get the medicine you want, or if there's a med I'm taking at the moment. They can't get now. There's the dose I should be taking, so they've given me double the dose, and I have to split the tablet in two.
Yes.
And that's just an issue of literally just not being able to access the right amount, which is. It's silly, isn't it?
Mind you, the whole hold on big pharmaceutical companies, maybe if we had less medicines, we might all use our
medicines more carefully.
Exactly, because they cure one problem and then you have to go back for another.
Oh, yeah. Don't you find as you get older, your bedside table fills up with various different things you're always meant to take?
Getting older.
There's age things.
No, I said as you get older, not as you get old.
I have got one of those pill boxes.
Oh, no.
Me too, I have.
I love them.
Is that a sign of old age?
Yes. But I just take, all vitamins. I take a lot of vitamins. It's not medical.
It's
all natural, sort of lion's mane.
But
and all
that's
that.
it. I take a lot of vitamins too, and it's just the stack of stuff on my bedside table.
Are you good at swallowing? Are you good at swallowing them?
No, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate the whole ritual. But
I can literally do a handful and one gulp.
You're just a young filly, Laura.
Lara.
Last time you were on, you accused me of calling you an old bag.
You did? Oh, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't. I just implied it.
OK.
Let's have a look at Dragon's Den. What have they been up to?
Oh, so Dragon's Den, what are they? They've had to pull an episode of Dragon's Den after it featured a controversial project that claimed to alleviate ME. The show saw investment in businesswoman Giselle Boxer's brand of ear seeds.
Ear seeds?
Which you now know about, which is something you put in your ear and it's supposed to be an alternative remedy.
Right.
And
Did
apparently
they invest in it?
Yes.
Yeah,
so
it's now been discredited so much they feel that they shouldn't feature it on Dragon's Den.
Yes, but also I think there's a bit of this whole reality show investment. I think there's a bit of weird stuff going on because the director of the Dragon, is he Stephen Bartlett?
Oh, yes.
His brother, he was on the board of directors of this ear company, and then he resigned from the board of directors, and now his brother Jason is on the board of directors.
Right.
So that seems to me a little bit underhand. So there's something odd going on.
There's a lot of snake oil out there, isn't there, with any of these kinds
Oh,
of
yes.
But again, you would. There's often a lot of concern about what people are buying online and people seeing something on Facebook or whatever. But it seems like even the supposedly discerning investors at Dragon's Den can easily be won over by this kind of nonsense when it's presented to them. But
yeah, you've got to be careful. Do you know what? Someone I knew years and years ago, who was from New Zealand, but it's gone to South Korea, and came back and said, "Oh, I brought you some gifts," and there were face masks, and one was snake oil.
Did you put it on?
And the other one was horse fat.
Oh.
No, I did not put them on.
What, you mean you wore it as a face mask and then breathed it in?
It was cream.
Oh,
you
I
rubbed
see,
it in.
that sort of mask.
And horse fat.
oof,
Well, I mean, it's oil, isn't it? It's fat, and I agree.
Yeah.
No, I did not put it on. No.
Yuck, no.
Oh, it's disgusting.
But I think the principle, though, of the other thing is, should you try and treat ME naturally or pharmaceutical? So, in a sense, there's no harm in trying alternative things. That's the other thing they're up in arms about. But then it makes you wonder, is there a drug to cure ME, and is the big pharmaceutical companies investing in Dragon's Den and across that someone is now putting forward an alternative? That might be the...
Well, yeah, I don't believe these conspiracy theories that farmers keep stuff away from us. I don't believe
Not farmers, big farmers, with a PH.
Well, yes, no, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think because I think they come up with a cure, they'd make a fortune. They'd make an absolute killing.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, because then they make then you get side effects, and then you.
They've developed a vaccine now for the treatment. They're trialling it in several different places in the world for the treatment of bowel cancer. And it's an injection. It's a series of injections, but apparently it is something that now targets the cancerous part.
Do you have to? You've got to be diagnosed.
You've got to be
first.
diagnosed with bowel cancer. You've got you've been scanned and they know where it is. But they then develop this. They tailor it for you, and they say not only does it at the moment looks as though it severely reduces the size of the cancerous tumour, but in some cases it could obliterate it. And they reckon it's going to be an absolute game changer in the treatment of bowel cancer, and that will be huge. We maybe ought to look at that a bit later.
Tom. Talking of sort of health matters, this is in the Daily Mail. Consultants, apparently NHS consultants, have turned down a pay deal which would see them earning an extra 20 grand a year, and they say it's not enough.
Yes, so obviously we've been preoccupied by the junior doctors' strikes, and I think most people had either taken their eyes off this or assumed it had been kind of quietly parked, but it was just because the British Medical Association were balloting their members. It came down to very fine margins. It was about 51-49 in the end, rejecting the pay deal. But as you say, yeah, a pay rise of £20,000 rejected. It's one of those things, isn't it, when you're talking about in those kinds of volumes of pay, it's very difficult for people to summon much sympathy, shall we say. One thing that is worth saying is that as of a couple of years ago, you had the BMA pointing out that in terms of real terms pay cuts in the health service, the consultants were amongst the most affected. There was about 30% real terms pay cuts since 2008 as a consequence of that. But again, it was one of those things that because of the fact they're earning between £90,000 and £120,000, roughly speaking, as they start, it's something which is a harder argument to land with the public as to why they deserve it. Of course, you know, you're dealing in an international health marketplace. People can go elsewhere for pay, so you want the health service to be competitive. But given the fact that so often with strike action, particularly when you talk about the public sector, so much of it relies on the goodwill of the public, them being on side for that to strengthen your negotiating position, it's that bit harder when you're dealing with professionals who, despite what might have happened to their pay packets in recent years, are at the much higher end of things. So.
Yeah.
But that is a significant pay offer, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is.
Best part of 20%.
Yeah.
And they still turn it down. Heck. What about, let's talk sixth form, should we? Lara, this is in the Times this morning.
Yeah.
And who's getting more applications than Oxbridge and Eton?
Yeah. I think universities are destroying private education. It's so changed, and I can talk a bit of experience with this, having had the privilege of being privately educated. And I think back in my day, it was a very lovely leg up. It was a great leg up. And you look at all the Conservative government now, most of them are Etonians, etc., etc. Whereas nowadays, I think it's more of a disadvantage. I mean, my son went to private school, not Eton, really clever, you know, 4 A-levels, maths, physics, and didn't get into Oxford, whereas his state counterparts would have done. Actually, in his case, he was delighted and went to Edinburgh, and it was brilliant. But it's funny, this will surprise people, and again, my husband would probably divorce me for saying this, but I actually think private education's had its day. I think it should be abolished. You wing that one in.
All right, why do you say that, having been privately educated yourself and privately educated your son?
Because it's changed. So there's 2 reasons.
Is that because it's no longer advantageous?
It's no longer advantageous. That is a very, very big reason. And B, I think the cost of it and the pressure it puts on people. So I know from the moment we got married, all my husband cared about was saving for the children's education. Every time we wanted to go on holiday, we can't go on holiday because got to pay the school fees, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, well, actually, maybe it would be nice to go on a sort of family educational cultural trip and go and educate them ourselves. And then, yeah, and I also think if the people who had money then, like in France, ploughed the money into the state system, then you'd have better schools and you'd know local people as well. So if you
but you raise a good point. I mean, though from the opposite angle, but saying it gives you a leg up. Well, that's a whole. There's something a bit perverse about that, isn't there? Those people who've got more money are already better off in society, giving their children a leg up.
Well, exactly.
Where the rest of us have to struggle on.
Well, exactly. So there's something wrong in that. So it's sort of, it doesn't work any which way. And I just think it would be lovely. This is from someone whose children went to boarding school. To have had my children at home, going to the local school, all involved with the local community. It's all so much sort of, rather than they get sent away to boarding school and then they don't know people in the local community. And then they're seen as the sort of poshos.
You need to go for the Paul McCartney version of schooling, don't you, where he sent his kids to local comprehensive schools, but when they got home to Paul McCartney's house with all his friends, with all his contacts, and clearly he and Linda worked on, having a family union, bringing their children up to do interesting things after school as well. And I must say, I've sort of come around to your way of thinking now. Private education has absolutely crippled me.
And imagine being in London with it. I mean, the competition, something really, no.
Do you reckon, Tom, scrap it?
I'm not necessarily for scrapping it. I think the big thing is to make state education as good or better than private education. I think there's been this big problem with, because obviously there's a question of funding, naturally, but there's also the question of sort of expectations. When you do see these schools, they're often free schools or academies, which have managed to kind of outcompete even the elite private schools. It's often because they're really imposing kind of very high standards. There's often a kind of sense that if you go to a state school, particularly if you're from a poor or working class background, the idea that you shouldn't be expected to do well, you shouldn't be expected to try and meet your expectations, that you're kind of put out to pasture from a very early age. And I think that's the thing that really needs to be tackled. I don't necessarily see abolishing private schools as the solution to that problem.
I don't think you need to abolish them. I think they're just becoming so pricey that an awful lot of families just can't.
But the trouble is, as long as they're there, you still have the pressures about if you think you could, and I don't know.
Well, you raised a very interesting point about dropping a bombshell.
Sorry.
On this one. No, it's good. OK, Lara, Tom, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on. And with that bombshell, we want your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Right, now let's find out what the weather has in store for all of us. Here's Aidan.